What's up, everybody? I'm Jackson Fuller with the Star News, and today I'm joined by West Brunswick football head coach Brett Hickman for the first of these kind of little Zoom meetings that I'm going to be doing throughout this suspension of high school sports. Haven't come up with a name, kind of flying by the seat of my pants. Brett, appreciate you so much for joining me, man. How have your first 2 weeks of quarantine been so far?
Well, we've suddenly found a lot of time on our hands, I guess is the case. So, we're just all trying to do right and follow the protocols that have been set forth by the federal government, state governments, and local governments. And a lot of time with my two little boys. So, that's been one positive that's come out of it. But, trying to stay busy.
Yeah. And we'll talk plenty of sports, but just as a teacher, I mean, what's it kind of been like? How much communication have you had with your students? Are you guys doing virtual classes yet, or that's coming down a little bit later on, right?
Yeah, I think we were all kind of, I think you could see it, I guess, the Thursday or Friday before we got out of school, what was coming down the pipe. So, I teach American history, and I had a lot of my stuff already on Google Classroom. It has required me to do a little bit more with Zoom, whether or not I'm seeing them or I'm recording things to, provide lessons or lectures or what it may be to my, say, I have 73 American history students, and then you've got, 65 to 70 returning football players, and then we've got 22 outgoing that you're trying to make sure that they're pushing forward toward graduation and doing those work. So trying to stay in as much communication as you can. Hopefully they're answering their phones and answering emails and doing those things. But, it's been challenging to say the least.
Do you guys have like any prep before, not for obviously this, but for a scenario where maybe you aren't able to get into the classroom for a little while and teach the kids? Or was this kind of just, it happened so fast and you've had to adjust on the fly?
I think the hardest thing has been, making sure some of your PDFs that you normally print out and maybe hand to your kids are, they're not getting to them. You're having to do a lot of stuff through um, Google Docs or Google Sheets or Google Forms or whatever the case may be. But, um, I really transitioned, I guess, this year to more of that stuff anyway in the classroom because we're one-to-one with Chromebooks in our class. So we've been fortunate in Brunswick County Schools. Dr. Oates and the school board have invested in technology and the programs that come with it. So it's been a little bit less of a transition this year than it would have been last year.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. All right, man, let's talk West Brunswick football. Last year just had to have been one of the most fun football seasons you've been a part of it at any level. I mean, at what point did you realize we've got something special brewing with this group?
Well, I think we had 17 or 18 starters coming back, or guys who had played a lot of football. So there's a start, and they had spent a year in our program, in our culture, and they had done those things, and that we had talked about. I guess it's been 24 months since I was named the head football coach, but they had spent a year in the weight room with Coach Wood. They had spent a year in our system defensively, and we had made some tweaks offensively that were going to fit our personnel a little bit better. So, I thought in the summer we had a chance to really turn the corner and maybe be a factor, in terms of getting to the playoffs, if you will, just the sheer amount of returning. But when we showed up and we played so well at Whiteville that night, defensively, we were really, really dominant against a good football team, a football team that I believe ended up winning 10 games. I think we kind of got a monkey off our back because they had beat us 4 or 5 straight years under 2 head coaches, including my first year. And then, we kind of got the thing rolling, and then we through the Dorian thing, which we missed a game against North Myrtle Beach. And then, finally getting over that Hoggard hump, I think we found a way to win a game against a good defensive football team in what was really an old school Southeastern North Carolina slugfest. I think it was 14-7. And, probably played our best game of the year 2 weeks later against a good Topsail team. And so, it just kind of kept coming to a crescendo and really one game we didn't give ourselves a chance to win, and that was the game for the regular season game at New Hanover, just because we made some costly mistakes that you can't do against a good football team. Really probably hit our ceiling. I thought that was probably more of a third round type game. I thought we had 2 of the 4 best teams in the East.
Yeah.
if you will, but the way it's set up, because they were conference champions and we had technically gained a second seed despite being 9-1, and ended up being a second round game, but played much better in that second round game, and kudos to them. But 10-2 certainly a step in the right direction for us.
Yeah, I mean, you could make an argument. You guys lost 2 games all year, and they were both to New Hanover. You can make an argument you were one of the 4 best teams across the entire state in the 3AA classification. I mean,
it might have been. Time will tell. Whether, I guess we'll never really know. But obviously they had a great year too, and I think the environment in the playoff game, just coming back 3 weeks later, and really it seemed like the whole town of Charlotte was there. Our whole student body was there. It was a real signal that we had brought big time football back to this community. So I was real proud. I was proud of the way our kids played that night.
Mm-hmm.
I can look at that film and tried to see what maybe I could have done better, what our coaches could have done better to give our kids a better chance to win. But in the end, they were a better football team than us. They proved it 2 times in a row, and we'll move forward and try and slay that giant in the next couple of years.
You never know what realignment holds, but you have the feel. There's a feeling, I think, at least for me, and I think some local football guys can feel it too, that New Hanover, West Brunswick is. If you guys were to stay in the same classification, that could be a really bubbling, a rivalry, a good just the 2 great teams in this side of the area that aren't quite at that 4A level, which you haven't really seen historically at the 3A level until New Hanover dropped down there. And you mentioned it. You guys had an opportunity to beat New Hanover in that second game. I think y'all tied the game, right? And got it 7-7.
We were down 14-7 and had the football. We'd gotten a couple of short fields off a blocked field goal and a blocked punt, for that matter, early in the second half, or an interception and a blocked punt. And, could have gone in, but chances are chances. And what I always tell everybody is what could have happened did happen. So you got to find a way to score more points to beat a team like that. But certainly, we're chasing them right now. I don't think there's any doubt about it. With what they've been able to do, really the last 10 years. It started with Mott, and then, to get a guy like Earl to come in there, and Earl Smith, and come in there and get the thing established and win a state championship. And Dillon's brought really a different type of flavor to them, the ability to formation you, to get in some, run heavy sets. And that puts a lot of stress on you, man. I mean, we see a lot of formations. I'd spent most of my career in college football, and that's every bit as hard to prep for them as it was some of the people, or most of the people we saw at that level. And then, they did such a great job defensively against us and against everybody. So, you hope it can be a rivalry, but for it to be a rivalry, we've got to find a way to beat them. And, but, I think I speak with a lot of confidence saying we're trending upward, and I do believe that. And I think we've got a chance. Next year is going to be a little bit of a transition year because we're losing so much, but we've got some kids in that 9th and 10th grade that can really, really be great high school football players, and we're excited about what we can do in the future.
You mentioned some of those kids, and one that there's a lot of them you guys have coming back that you're losing a lot, but you do have some really good players coming back. But Carter Wyatt sticks out in my mind a lot. I mean, he seems just the type of high school football player that you can not only build a scheme around, but a culture around. From what I can tell, he's such a good leader and really a guy that loves his teammates and West Brunswick football.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt. Your best players have got to be your bell cow. They got to be your best. They got to be your best leaders. And I think our culture changed when Javian bought into being that. His junior year, and he had really been an underachiever his freshman and sophomore year, and when he started producing the way he was capable of producing, it seemed to kind of bring everybody along with him. Carter, he's in that natural spot, Mike linebacker, which is really the spot on defense where you have to have a really good player. And I thought last year he would be a guy who would come in and do some good things for us, but he'd make some sophomore mistakes. But boy, did he have a great year for us, and he's establishing himself probably as an FBS prospect the same way Javian did, because when you come in there and you look at him, people worry about his size, and he's already the prototype. He's 6'2", 220 pounds right now. You know, what's going to be the telltale sign of what kind of prospect he develops into is how well he runs, and he does those things. But he's just such a great kid. You know, he's in the top 5 in his class right now academically, and you know, he's just you like to be good up the middle. You like to be good at nose tackle, Mike linebacker, and then the 2 safety spots. And we were awfully fortunate last year with Javian and then him and then DeAndre Clarity and Johnny Magby behind them. So you got 2 of those guys coming back. You know, I expect both those guys to really anchor our defense up the middle.
You know, you've talked a lot, when we've talked, you've talked a lot about building a culture and trying to establish, you know, a winning mentality with West Brunswick. How important was it last year to have that type of success with a group of seniors? I have to imagine, you know, even if this coming year is a bit of a transition year, there's that belief and that know that, you know, when you've got the pieces there, there's an established identity and culture within West Brunswick that can produce great seasons like you guys were able to last year.
Well, I think it's important to mention, you know, I think there had been 20 years between my dad being the head coach, and he had had a great run, and me, and for whatever reason, and there really hadn't been a lot of stability other than Coach Fletcher, who had been there for a while. So there had been 5 or 6 head coaches between us. And there always seemed to be something missing, whether or not it was kind of a downturn in talent, which is going to happen at the high school level. Or you have administration issues, you have lack of consistency in the administration. They're not letting kids get in the weight room. As the case was with Coach Fletcher, you know, they just really, after his first initial staff, they didn't do a great job of getting him a whole lot of help. Mm-hmm. You know, in all of their defense, there's some natural positives that come with being an alum and kind of having that Rolodex and having the last name I have. But there's some real positives in having a guy I played for as the athletic director, you know, and then Miss Benton, our principal, has been gung-ho on getting kids in the weight room. We just seem to have a better alignment right now from the top down, whether or not it's the county administration working on the turf and getting the bond referendum with the new buildings, all the way down to Miss Benton, you know, through Megan Hardy and guidance, and Leslie Reeves, who really handles a lot of our kind of minutia work that head coaches don't really like to do, and then Coach Fletcher and Miss Benton working together to get good coaches. I get way too much credit for this. I mean, the first 2 hires I made were Keith Wood, and I do nothing with Keith in the weight room. I mean, he is totally in control in there, outside of who do you want in there and who's working the way we want them to work. I mean, I know what's going on, but, you know, Keith is running the show in there, and we're doing what he wants to do, and that was an important hire. I mean, talking about a guy who had spent time with Scott Braswell and Richard Bailey. Those are 2 of the best coaches in the history of Eastern North Carolina football. So, you know, that was intentional to hire him, but, you know, he's changed our program as much as I have. Caleb Pardue, you know, the idea was originally they had been very bad on defense, that I was going to come in and run the defense. Well, I interviewed Caleb, and you know, we kind of meshed our ideas together, and he's been a slam dunk, no doubt, future head coach hire in our program. And we've been able to add on. We added 2 more guys in the building last year, and we'll probably be able to add a guy or 2 this year. So, I mean, you're looking at a spot where, you know, we get 7 paid supplements, and 4 or 5 of our guys have been former head coaches. That makes a big difference. And so you talk about culture, but you know, really the most important thing is that we've had the alignment from administration down that has allowed us to let our culture permeate and manifest in our school building and with our players. And to their credit, they have bought in. But we've got really, really, really good assistant coaches that have helped me more than I could ever help them. So I think that's probably, you know, A, B, C, D points of why this has happened and why it's happened as quickly as it has.
You've got to have a foundation basically to develop the right culture. So one reason I wanted to talk to you today is, you know, I've seen on Twitter all of the kind of virtual football clinics that you've been running, and Was that by design already, or has the coronavirus kind of forced your hand and made those clinics virtual based more so than getting in front of other coaches?
No, I wish it was really smart. One of my friends, Justin Grandinetti, who I've gotten to know, I used to recruit Fayetteville a lot, and he really ran recruiting at Jack Brett High School. He's taken it to another level. I mean, he's just been phenomenal. He's got coaches from all over the country kind of doing that. But what I thought we might do was really center it for, guys in this part of North Carolina, or open up the North Carolina high school coaches. And, we had 6 or 7 guys come on Zoom yesterday and speak. We brought Brian Teal in for Richmond Senior. And then the one thing over the course of the last year or two, the Eastern North Carolina Football Coaches Association, which is based out of Greenville, but they do a really good, I'm a member of the association. They do a really good clinic. Me and Craig and a few of the guys from down this way go up there every year. So we wanted to do something that really could help that organization get some of those guys some more exposure, come out and talk. And then I used some of my connections from when I was in school at East Carolina. 2 guys, Joe Sloan, who played for us while I was a student assistant there, is now the offensive coordinator at Louisiana Tech, did a session for us. And then Trip Weaver, who just came back to East Carolina as the safeties coach, did a session for us. I think, coaches like being around coaches, and it's a time where really all the resources that are available online, the ability to watch film, it's a time to get better because, you just don't have that extra work that's leaning on you. I get up and I probably work on teaching school for 3 or 4 hours, but then you're just looking for things the rest of the day to do. So, I think we probably had 80 or 90 coaches involved yesterday, and then I've posted all those things on my YouTube channel for resources. I mean, even though we're competitors, there can't be secrets. I think coaches in general are learners. The really good ones are, they stay on top of trends. They stay on top of developments, and then selfishly, we're going to have to change some things offensively because of what we're doing, with a different type of quarterback the next couple of years. I'm interested selfishly in trying to learn from some ideas that maybe we can steal from what Steve Brooks is doing at CBA Cock, or what, I had Luke on yesterday at Laney just so. And, it's kind of funny because as the administrator, you can watch what everybody's doing. Me and Craig and Wilson, we're all kind of feverishly taking notes to kind of see if we can pick his brain on some of the things he's thinking, because that is the unknown right now in the conference. So, but, you don't do it for that reason. You do it to try and do right by the profession. And, it was a good turnout.
When you think about the coronavirus and its impact on your football team, what are you guys missing right now not being at school? Is it just time in the weight room, or would there be more stuff going on for West Brunswick?
Well, I think the hardest thing, and J.P. Price and I were talking about this the other day, they're shutting down gyms in Shallotte now, so it's going to be really hard for them to lift. We have Coach Wood has got all of our kids are in the weight room, so at school during the school day, so they have Google Classroom, and he's posting workouts every day. It's hard to keep them accountable. You try and get them to Snapchat you stuff. In fact, next week I'm gonna set up some Zoom meetings with our kids to talk to them about, it's got to be your team. Carolina had a virtual clinic on Wednesday, and Coach Mac Brown spoke to us about the guys who are doing the right things right now will be the ones who benefit in the fall the most. So, trying to stay on top of those things. I think the thing that really scares all of us, we're all in the same boat. But if you lose the summer, how safe is it going to be to go out there and do things in August and then beat on each other 3 weeks later? You want to make sure football is just not a game you can go out and start playing games in 2 weeks. You want your kids to be strong. You want them to be in shape. But, I've tried to keep a big picture thing throughout this whole thing. I think the biggest impact, obviously, the thoughts and prayers go out to the people who are directly affected by people who are infected with this thing. And then, selfishly coming from Brunswick County, New Hanover County, Pender County, your whole audience really is going to be drastically affected by the lack of tourism. You know, my best friend, you know, he's got businesses all over Brunswick County, and they don't make money if people aren't coming down here. So, you know, you pray for those guys, you try and do the right thing. And football is, or I mean, our job is to try and stay in touch with our kids, but there's bigger things going on here. You know, I mean, I won a state championship my senior year in baseball, and I did that with, you know, outside of my wife, my children, my parents, and my brothers, with probably the 4 guys in this world that are closest to me. And you know, they were teammates of mine, and we won a high school baseball state championship. And that opportunity is taken away from the kids all over the state of North Carolina. The basket, to be on the doorstep for those basketball kids and not have the opportunity to do that. I mean, that stinks. You know, I mean, we can sit here and say, woe is me, but, you know, this is really affecting a lot more people, a lot more important than people associated with high school football. And I try to remember that. You know, I mean, I think we've got 26 kids on our football roster who were playing lacrosse, baseball, or something like that. And then a lot of them are running track. I mean, that's been taken away from them. And not to mention, you know, can I be worried if they turn in their vocabulary late, you know, because their dad might be laid off of work. So they've got to go and make a little extra dough for the family. So, you know, you try and keep perspective in all of this. And you know, it's really, really, really unfortunate.
Yeah, and I think, you know, sports has been become such a fabric of our lives, but it's times like this where you realize at the end of the day, it still is a distraction from a lot of real world issues that we, you know, go through and battle on, you know, a daily, weekly basis. But this is certainly a real world issue that's kind of needs to be put in front of sports at the moment. But, you know, they're still fun to talk about. That's why we're having this discussion right now. So last question for you, Coach, and maybe we can springboard off that to a little discussion. But what's the one sport that's been canceled or postponed right now from coronavirus that you wish was not canceled or postponed? If you could get one sport, like a professional, whether it was opening day, March Madness, the Masters, something like that, NASCAR, what's the one thing you wish, if you could just get one sport going, what would it be?
Well, most years March Madness is one of my favorite things to go. But I mean, I'm a North Carolina basketball fan, so, you know, it had mercifully ended in Greensboro the night before everything got canceled. So, you know, Selection Sunday wouldn't have been as much fun to see where the Heels were going, this year. And then I'm an East Carolina alum, you know, and they had a team that could have gotten to Omaha. So that stinks. But, you know, I had on an Atlanta Braves shirt this morning. Diehard Braves fan, as a lot of people know. So, you know, baseball has always been a big part of my life. So a much better player than I ever was a football player. So, you know, not having the opportunity to watch a team that I think might be able to compete for it all this year, at least for the foreseeable future, you know, it hurts me. So that's where I'm at. So now I've got I guess everybody's up to speed on NFL free agency, because that's about the only thing going on right now. So
yeah, it'll be interesting to see, because baseball is the one sport that, you know,
it's always there.
Yeah, and it was just about to start too. With, you know, a lot of these sports were either coming to the tail end, or they were, I guess the NBA was, you know, coming to the tail end, but the playoffs are a whole different animal. Baseball, it'll be fascinating to see what they do with a 162 game schedule. That's clearly not going to be played in the same amount of time, and I doubt it'll be that many games. But we could be having baseball in December, which would be miserable for fans of the Yankees and Red Sox that are going to those cold games. But it'll be fascinating to see what kind of measures Major League Baseball takes.
Well, we have to start, you know, as a high school athletic association, I mean, let's start asking some questions of what's going to happen to the sports calendar for that, you know, because like I mentioned, soccer and whatever else is played in the fall, track, you can go out, you can train for that in a week and a half, 2 weeks, and you're in decent enough shape where you can start playing games. But if the football calendar has to be pushed back, or, you know, if you start cutting games and you only want to play conference games, what's that going to do to school budgets? And then does it drive into basketball season? Then does it drive into baseball season? So, it's a good time not to be an AD. That's what I told Jimmy, and I told Brad Lewis, who taught me history at West Brunswick when he was in school. I was like, man, I'm not envious of the situation that you guys are going to be in, because, how do you budget when you don't know whether or not you're going to lose home games? And it might be too early to talk about things like that. But, if we're not practicing in the summer, I think it's going to be awfully hard to open up on August the 1st and then play a jamboree 2.5 weeks later. So a lot of questions left to be unanswered. But, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, there are more pressing issues that exist well beyond high school athletics. But, that's why me and you are having this conversation, because that's our passion. And if people are listening, that's our passion. So, I do want to just encourage all the high school athletes out there. You're not forgotten. Our school's done a great job trying to recognize the spring sport athletes that are missing their season, and whether or not it's the Cape Fear region, what you guys have done and sacrificed over the course of the last 4 years, coaches, teachers, community members, wherever in Brunswick, New Hanover, Pender, Columbus County, everybody listening to this, we hate it for you as coaches, and we're wishing all these guys future success in whatever they choose to do, because this is just a real miserable way to spend your senior year of high school, especially.
Well said, Coach. And we hope that there are seniors that get to finish their careers. I gotta say, it's unlikely, but the NCHSA hasn't given up hope yet. And that's a positive at least. So, and again, I'll say this: when I send this story out, I'm gonna send out a tweet to everybody. If there are any other coaches or players that would like to kind of jump on one of these videos and have a quick discussion about what's going on, or have any interesting stories, drop me a line at my email, which is jackson.fuller@starnewsonline. Going to hopefully come up with a name for these and get these rolling at least twice a week over however long we're kind of in this coronavirus stuff. But Coach Hickman, I really appreciate it so much for joining me today, man. Stay safe out there in Charlotte, and best wishes to you and your family out there.
All right, Jackson. Be good, man.
Yes, sir. Have a good one.
Thank y'all.